Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm meeting you after a long time because I had some other assignments also, and we are almost on the verge of our syllabus because we are about to finish our syllabus. A few things are left, and uh, I have a plan to finish this Neruda poems. We will do Ode to the Tomato, and in the next class there will be one poem that is poetry, and after that Ars Poetica. Then we will finish Neruda, and if we have time, then as I've told you already, that we will do the second essay of Amit Chaudhary. So let's come to Ode to the Tomato. So this is a very wonderful poem, and this is a very interesting poem because you will see how Neruda is actually taking up some useful and is a food. It's a vegetable, and it's a very attractive vegetable. But using this particular vegetable, or this particular fruit or vegetable or food, for dealing in something which is very serious, actually dealing with the colonial condition of the country, with the social, political and cultural aspects of the colonization that happened in South America, especially in Latin American countries. So this is something new, and how he is actually doing that actually we will see in this poem. Now actually it is the poetical power of Neruda for which he can use some very mundane objects and take them to some sublime heights. And as we have seen that the poetry of Neruda is marked by his simplicity of language and technique. So his language is very simple, and the technique that he uses that becomes very much accessible to a very common reader, one who is not an initiated reader of poetry. He or she can easily understand what actually Neruda wants to convey through his poems. Now here the tone is very optimistic. When we will read the poem, we will see that the tone of the poem is very optimistic, and the poem is full of pictorial descriptions. Now of what is the description about? The poem is a pictorial description of a salad being prepared. It is salad making, and it has connection with the salad bowl in the context of American culture. Now when we will discuss how Neruda is describing the preparation of salad with onion and pimento and that is olive oil and other that is parsley leaves and all, we will see that the process of making a salad is quite different from the concept of melting pot that we study in the field of culture studies. Because in a melting pot, what happens, we mix up various ingredients and we melt it, and when the melting is done, what happens, the ingredient parts, the componential parts, they no longer retain their individual quality, their trait. But what happens in a salad, now you take a colander, you mix parsley leaves, tomatoes, chopped onions, and then dress it with olive oil and other vegetables like boiled potatoes, pimentos. Pimento is actually sweet chili, sweet pepper. And then what you do, you toss the colander, and once you toss the colander, the salad is prepared. But when you see the salad, you will be able to differentiate that these are the onions, these are tomatoes, these are parsley leaves. So all the ingredients that made up the salad, they retain their qualities, they retain their individual traits. So what happens in a salad bowl, in the context of culture studies, in a salad bowl culture, all the people from different countries, from different class, sects and racial groups, when they come and congregate, they retain their qualities. But what happens in a melting pot, they lose their qualities and they constitute something new. What we have seen in the poems of Tagore, that Shak Hundal Pathan Moghol, Ak Dekhe Holo Lean. So in melting pot, this the Bengali word lean is very important. They all mix up and make something, mix up into one and make something different. But in salad bowl, this lean is not there. Lean, loy, dirki, don't know. This mixing up, this melting process is not there in a salad bowl. So before going into the detailed discussion of the poem, it is better to read the to read the poem. So this poem is from, this is an ode, and I don't think I need to give a description of, need to give a definition of what is an ode. You all know what is an ode and how many types of odes are there. Ode has some connections with poems. There are Pindaric odes, there are Horatian odes and all this that we have all done in your undergraduate classes. So this is an ode. But here Neruda is actually not following the traditional structure of ode. So what you have seen in Keats's Ode to a Nightingale or in other odes, Ode to Grecian Urn. So here Neruda is dealing with the very structure of ode differently. This is from the Elementary Odes and it was published in 1954. Now you will see that this poem is made up of very short lines. So why actually Neruda is using such short lines? Sometimes a particular line is a single word. Why Neruda is using only a single word to make a line? So actually this is something which gives or gives rise to a sort of immediacy in the reader to go to the next line. What is going on? What is there in the next line? So suppose you are very hungry, and what happens, you are waiting for the meal to be prepared. So the more the meal is getting ready for you to eat or getting ready for decoration on the platter in the lunch or dinner table, the more the time comes to consumption, the more it is getting ready, what happens, your hungriness, your hunger actually increases. You become more hungry and there is an immediacy in you to consume that, to see what is going on. So sometimes you see that as I've seen in some advertisements in 2 Minutes Maggie, that the children are playing with their banging the spoons on the plates, that we are very hungry. So there is an immediacy, the sense of immediacy, a feeling of immediacy. So this is why the short lines. So when you are hungry, you say, what do you say? I am very hungry, or you say hungry. Ma khide peyeche. Mom, I'm hungry. Mother, I'm hungry. So you don't use a full line. So this immediacy, this sense of immediacy, this feeling of immediacy, that you will see there in this poem. And this is why Neruda is using such short lines. The street drowns in tomatoes, noon, summer, light, breaks into tomato halves, and the streets run with juice. So this is a single line, but a single sentence. But how many lines are there? There are 11 lines. So he breaks a single sentence into 11 lines to show the short line structure, how it generates a sort of immediacy, a feeling of immediacy in the mind of the reader who wants to consume it. Okay, the street drowns in tomatoes, noon, summer, light breaks into tomato halves, and the streets run with juice. In December, the tomato cuts loose, invades kitchens, takes over lunches, settles at rest on sideboards with the glasses, butter dishes, blue salt cellars. It has its own radiance, a goodly majesty. Too bad we most assassinate. A knife plunges into its leaving pulp. Red viscera, a fresh, deep, inexhaustible sun floods the salads of Chile. Beds cheerfully, with the blonde onion, and to celebrate oil, the filial essence of the olive tree lets itself fall over its gaping hemispheres. The pimento adds its fragrance, salt its magnetism. We have the day's reading. Parsley flaunts its little flags, potatoes thump to a boil. The roasts beat down the door with their aromas. It's time, let's go. And upon the table, belted by summer, tomatoes, stars of the earth, stars multiplied and fertile, show off their convolutions, canals, and plenitudes, and the abundance boneless, without husk or scale or thorn, grant us the festival of ardent color and all embracing freshness. So, I think you have followed the text of the poem. Now, at the very beginning, we see that the poet wants to say that this particular time is the time for tomatoes. Now, at this time, there is an abundance in tomato production. And what is the time? He says that it is summer, and then he says it is December. Now, summer and December, because in southern hemisphere, South America is a country of South America is a continent in the southern hemisphere, and Chile is one of the South American countries. That's why what happens, there is summer in December, and in May and June and March, April, there is winter, just the opposite of the northern hemispheres. And this sense of hemisphere we will find in the lines that when Neruda describes how a tomato is cut into two halves. So leave that. So he gives the very time. He pinpoints the time when tomato is abundance. Tomato is in abundance. And he says that it is the summer after, it is a summer noon, and people are preparing their lunch, and that's why salad is getting prepared. He says the street drowns in tomatoes. Now the streets are overflowing with tomatoes. There's an abundance, plenitude of tomatoes, and the time is noon. It is a summer noon when light breaks into tomato halves. And what happens? So how he actually telescopes one particular image into another image, that is very interesting. He says that it is summer noon, and in the kitchen, in the pantry, the one person is preparing a salad, and that's why what he does at the very beginning, he is cutting the tomato into two halves. So first they cut the tomato into two halves, and when the tomato is cut into two halves, the red juice comes out. Now he will give a line of images to describe that. Before that, he says that it is a noon, summer noon, and tomato is cut. And when the tomato is cut, it becomes radiant. Why? Because the sun is in the sky. It is after, it is a noon time, and the sunlight falls on the cut, the pieced tomatoes, the half tomatoes. And then he says that the light breaks into tomato halves. The sunlight falls on the tomato halves, and the streets run with juices. Now here you will get two images, two things he wants to say. One, when you cut the tomato into two, what happens? The juice oozes out, the juice comes out. So later he will describe this, he will connect this with the assassination. When you kill somebody, when somebody is murdered, the blood comes out. So similarly, when the tomato is cut into two, the juice comes out. And at the same time, when there is tomato in abundance outside, tomato is being sold outside with mounded heaps. The shopkeepers, what happens? Sometimes one or two tomato, they are what? They get smashed. And when you see the tomatoes are smashed, the juice is there smeared. The area, the place is smeared with tomato juice. And total mess is made out of that. So when you will see that there is a mounds of tomatoes or tomato heaps, there are one or two tomatoes, they are smashed and the juice is spread everywhere. So he says that the tomato halves and the streets run with juice. Fine. In December, then he says, first he gives the time, he comes from the very specific time to the general time. It is the summer light, it is the noon, then the season summer, and then he says it is December. In December, the tomato cuts loose, invades the kitchen. All kitchens are invaded with tomatoes. Now, he says that, now he is actually describing or giving a culinary image. But every time he is describing this, he is using certain words which goes very much with the political and social aspects of colonization also. Because cutting into two halves, cutting the country, breaking open the country, ripping open the country, then invading, taken over. He says that in the December, the tomato cuts loose, invades the kitchen. The kitchen is invaded. Now, it is the Chilean kitchen. It is the Chilean kitchen. Now, how one particular image gets overlapped with other images. If you think that this tomato is a world, the tomato is cut into two hemispheres. There are certain political, cultural, social differences between the two hemispheres when they are cut open. One hemisphere is totally different from other hemispheres, because you will see that all the southern hemisphere countries were at certain point of time colonized countries or colonies of the certain northern hemisphere countries. So there is a political binary created between the two hemispheres. That the tomato is cut open, and then what happens? This is, if you take the tomato as an image for a world, as a symbol of world, it is cut into two halves. Then he says that if tomato is something, that the cutting of the tomato, this preparation of the salad, this mixing of various vegetable items to make a certain thing, this particular process invades a particular space. A spatial structure is actually controlled by a certain action where various components are mixed into one. So a particular place becomes a very site of colonial interculturation, colonial intermixing, or cultural intermixing. So he says that the kitchen becomes a site where this preparation of salad is done, or it is in process. Invades the kitchen, then he says takes over the lunch. So tomato invades the kitchen. Now here tomato becomes a symbol of that preparation of salad, how salad is prepared. So this particular thing invades the kitchen, and it takes over means it controls, it takes over lunches, settles at rest on the sideboards. So a sideboard is a sort of a cupboard where you will see that glass utensils and crockeries are kept. A sideboard is something which is kept beside the dining table. So you will see that tomatoes are there, kept in a glass bowl, so that they are kept in a handy places, so that they can be taken very easily and the salad can be made. So this settles at rest on sideboards with the glasses. So in the sideboard you will see there are glasses are kept, crockeries are kept, glasses, butter dishes with, and then very interesting, blue salt cellars. So salt is something which tempers the food, and the salt cellar is something which holds the salt, and the salt cellar is Spanish Turkish blue in color. The salt cellar is blue in color. So blue salt cellars, so it has a connection with Spain. So you will see that how with the very symbol of tomato, Neruda is bringing in the idea of the Spanish invasion in Chile. It has its own radiance. The tomato has, it is very bright a vegetable, its own radiance, a goodly majesty. Too bad we most assassinate. And then he says the tomatoes are kept and then we assassinate. And he says this is a very bad action that we do on our part. So too bad we most assassinate. A knife plunges, you rip open the tomato, and then you will see that a tomato is a very vulnerable vegetable. Now then he will describe the tomato as a very symbol of the Chile as a country or any other South American countries, or the people who were there were the original inhabitants of those countries, the Red Indians, who were very vulnerable, who have no casing or protective shell around them with which they can protect the external invasions. They gave away their all, and there was a mixing. So he says it has its own radiance, a goodly majesty. Too bad we most assassinate. A knife plunges into its living pulp. So if you touch a tomato, it is soft. It is very much like a human body. So when you use a knife to cut the tomato into two, you don't have to work too hard like other hard vegetables. Cutting a potato into two and cutting a tomato into two, both are different. Red, when you cut the tomato into two, red. Viscera. Viscera means the internal organs in our body, like the heart, the lungs, the liver and all. So in post-mortem we see there is something sort of viscera testing that also happens as a post-mortem process. So viscera are the various internal organs in our body. Red viscera are fresh. So when you cut the tomato, you will see that the internal parts, the juicy part, the pulp, the seeds, and there are certain lines like canals. So here we will see that tomato becomes a symbol of Chile. There are canals, there are lands, there are certain that is, here he says convolutions, canals, etc. So all these can describe a tomato, a land, as well as a body. When you cut open a body, you will find there are blood veins, there are internal organs, there are water, there are flesh, and so many things. So a fresh, deep, inexhaustible sun. So this is the very important and turning point line of this poem. So he says that the tomato is vulnerable, it is cut into two, but it is the inexhaustible sun. So even if you cut the tomato into two, even if you smash the tomato for preparing something, still it retains its radiance, its brilliance, because he says that the tomato is an inexhaustible sun. Floods, the inexhaustible sun floods the salad. So when you put the tomato into the salad bowl, into the colander, it actually takes control over, it takes over everything that is there in the colander. So when the tomato is put into the colander, into the salad bowl, it becomes a very prominent thing. It starts dominating the thing. So the very first thing you will notice in a salad bowl is the red cut tomatoes. Floods the salad. So he says inexhaustible sun floods the salad of Chile. And then he says beds cheerfully with the blonde onion. So he says that the tomato, it was cut open, it is invaded, the tomato is invaded, cut open into the kitchen, and then what has happened, what is happening when it is put into the salad bowl, it gets completely, very happily, cheerfully, merrily mixed up with the other ingredients, with the other vegetables that were there in the salad bowl. And he says that it mixes up, it beds, it slips together very happily with the white onion. When you cut open the onion, it is white from inside. So here you will see that how the Chilean people, the Red Indian, the Indian Americans happily mixed up, united with the light white Spanish. So it beds cheerfully with the blonde onion, And to celebrate oil, the filial essence of the olive tree, and how that salad is tempered with the olive oil. Now, olive is something that is produced in the Mediterranean Europe, and when I'm talking of olive oil, so he says that it has a filial essence. So when you press oil out something from something, suppose you are extracting oil from olive, it carries with it the essence of the thing from which it has been extracted. So oil has been equated by Neruda as the offspring of the thing from which it has been extracted. So olive oil becomes the son or daughter or the offspring of the thing from offspring of olive, because it carries the very smell of that thing from which it is extracted. So olive oil becomes the very offspring of olive because it carries or retains the very smell of olive. Just like our children, our offspring carries our genetic structure, our essence, our qualities, our behaviors, that we say he goes very much with his, like his, he has certain similarities, or he goes very much like his father or mother or something. So all this, and he says that the salad is united, the tomato gets united, beds cheerfully with the onion, and it is tempered by the filial essence of olive oil. And what happens after this union? A new race comes out. There is an offspring which it takes birth, which is born out of this union of two different ingredients or items. Okay, and to celebrate oil, the filial essence of the olive oil lets itself fall over its gaping hemispheres. So on the open and the halved hemispheres of the tomatoes, we put olive oil and onions, and we will see that Neruda gives a list of other things that are mixed into that salad. Over its gaping hemispheres, the pimento adds its fragrance. So many things are coming after that to add to this, to add fragrance, color, taste, aroma to this new mixture. So sweet peppers are fragrance, salt its magnetism. Salt is given because salt at its own attractiveness, because salt attracts, it enhances the taste and it gives a certain attractiveness to the very taste of the food. We have the days waiting. Now everything, this assassination image actually then narrows down or opens up, whatever you want to say, you can say, into an image of union. So there is the days waiting. What started with violence ended with happiness, ended with joy. Now we have the days waiting, and what happens, how the wedding is celebrated. Parsley flaunts its little flags. Parsley units kind of aromatic leaves that sometimes we use. I don't know if when the city center will be open, you can visit that is Spencer's store. You will get parsley over there. I don't know whether it is open or not. You can go and visit city center after that and go to Spencer's. There we will find parsley leaves. So it's a very it has a very good smell. So when you add parsley into something, it gets a new aroma. Okay, it's very much like your coriander leaves. So parsley flaunts its little flags. It has very small leaves. Flags. Potatoes thump to a boil. Thumping means somebody is like clapping or thumping. When something very good happens or a good declaration is made or there is a good announcement, we support that by thumping on the board. So when the potato is boiled in a closed lid pot, what happens? It thumps because of this boiling. The potato thumps into the bowl. It thumps in the lid into the bowl, and there is a thumping sound. Okay. Thump to a boil. The roast beat down the door with their aromas, and there are the roasted beets. So all these actually make up this union. All these participate and celebrate the union. Let's go, and upon the table, belted by summer tomatoes. He says that now the food is ready, let's go. So there is an interesting Bengali poem by Sukumar Rai. So this poem is also made up of very small lines. খাই খাই করো কেন এসো বসো আহারে খাওয়াবো আজব খাওয়া ভোজ কয় যাহারে. So why are you feeling hungry? Come and have this food. I will serve today a food which is called the feast. So bhoj is also a different type of feast, a new type of feast. Khawabo ajob khawa bhoj koy jahare. So he says that all this actually celebrating the very union, the very wedding. And then he says, now it is ready, it's time, let's go. And upon the table belted by summer. So the table, it is a summer afternoon, the lunch is ready, come and enjoy this salad. Belted by summer tomatoes. Then he describes the tomato, stars of the art. He says the tomatoes are the stars of the art. Stars multiplied and fertile. So the tomatoes, they are sacrificing their life to give pleasure to those who wants to consume. Stars multiplied and fertile show off their convolutions. The tomato is opening itself up with its convolutions, with its viscera, with its veins, with its pulp, with its juice and everything. The convolutions, canals and plenitudes means many, and abundance, and it is opening up. It is very vulnerable, but at the same time, in despite its vulnerability, it opens itself up for you all to enjoy, to consume. And the abundance, it is boneless, it is very soft, boneless, it is without husk, there is no cover, there is no protective shell outside the tomato with which it can protect itself from the invaders. Without husk or scale or thorn, it has no thorn, no bones like fish, no husk or no shell. Grant us the festival of ardent color. So ultimately what started with a violence ends up in a jovial mood of ardent color and all embracing freshness. So here we see that Neruda is trying to give an image of how Chile becomes the very site where this invasion happened, and that invasion ultimately led to a sort of union of different level, and ultimately a new class, a new race, a new nation came out with new nationalities, the Chilean people, who retains the qualities of their invaders as well as the qualities of those who were colonized. Okay. Now, this poem actually carries profound political, social and cultural connotations. Okay, because it alternates between, now Neruda actually is taking up pure pictures of culinary delight. So you will see that there is delight and at the same time violence that happens in the kitchen. Both these feelings, this delight and violence, are juxtaposed by at the end of the cutting tomatoes, because it started with the cutting of the tomatoes into two halves, the assassination of the tomatoes, and ended with the wedding of the union of the tomatoes with the other things that actually make up the salad. And then he says that it is an inexhaustible sun, because it never loses its radiance, and ultimately it is successful in getting united with the other vegetables, especially the white onions. Okay, here it appears that Neruda is here talking of, now when this particular image he is giving, that how the tomato beds cheerfully with the white onion, it is a sexual union between the two races, not only a sexual union between two people, but two races. How there is a sort of interculturation, how the thing happened of a sexual union, cultural union, social union between the Indian Americans and the white Europeans. Okay. Now, I'll like to discuss a little about the geography of the poem. So, what is there? Now, Neruda uses a descriptive manner to praise tomatoes. So, he gives a description of how salad is prepared. So, it gives a very sufficient and wise vision to understand the climate that is there in Chile. So, from the very poem, reading the poem, you will be able to understand the very climatic condition in Chile, because how I have discussed that it is December and there it is summer now, because it is a southern hemisphere country, and it is noon, it is very hot, and people at this time they consume, they eat, they enjoy tomato as a part of salad vegetable. So Neruda gives a very description of the Chilean climate, and he talks about the sunny days, and he says that the tomato is it's the main harvest at this time, because he says that the tomato is a summer light, and he says tomato breaks in two tomato halves and the streets run with the juice. So from the very first stanza, if you call the first 10 lines a stanza, or the very first single sentence of the poem, you get the very geographical condition of Chile, you get the very idea of the climate, as well as you get the idea of what is the main agricultural product at this particular time. He says in the month of December, the tomato cuts loose, invades kitchen. So here you will see that here at this time in summer, tomato is the main harvest. When the readers read at the middle of the poem, when you come to the middle of the poem, you will see a vivid picture of the hot sunny climate, because it says the inexhaustible sun floods the salads of Chile. So here he describes the tomato as the inexhaustible sun, because at this time the sun is very hot. In the afternoon, it is very just up above your head, and it is very hot. So at this time the Chilean climate is very hot, and when you look at the sun, it almost looks like a red hot tomato. So at the end you will see that the final reference to the landscape and plenty of water system. He says that stars multiplied and the fertile show off their convolutions, canals and plenitudes and the abundance. And then he says, but at this time there is water, and the land becomes fertile, and the canals are full of water, and this particular time is a very good time for the agricultural activities. So you get a very good idea of the geography of Chile. So here Neruda is not only giving the political, social and cultural conditions of Chile through the very culinary image or description of salad preparation, but at the same time he also deals with the physical aspects of the country, the geographical conditions of the country as well. Is it okay? If you have any question regarding this, you can call me up. Till then, so I'll tell you when I will take the next class, and this next class will be on Neruda's poem Poetry from Al Negra. It is a notebook from 1964. It was published in 1964. Okay, so in the next class I'll let you know when I will take the next class. Probably today is 13th, so I hope to take on 18th or something. I'll let you know. If it is possible, I'll take before. I'll take the class. Till then, goodbye. Have a nice time. Take care of your health and stay at home, stay safe. And if there is any problem, give me a call. Thank you.